Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 121. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here on this Friday show. Dave, the pick is in, and with the 20th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Kenny Pickett, the quarterback from Pittsburgh. So all the time and all the hours of speculation and predictions is over. Kenny Pickett is the guy.
Pickett is in, right? Hey, I'll be here all weekend. I'm gonna try to be at the very least. Got the guy right next door. How's that? You could have saved a lot of money with with the quarterback pro day tours and all like that. Look, first and foremost, let's start with kind of the overarching positive. All this is local quarterback gets to stay home. First quarterback taken in the 2022 draft. Good kid overall. I mean, it's hard to find anything wrong with this kid from a character standpoint. The old hearts and smarts, stayed in college the extra year, and it really paid off for him. Was in the running, obviously, for the Heisman, Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award he won. Just real active, from my understanding, already in the Pittsburgh community. Really the feel good story that Steelers fans, I think, wanted way back in with Dan Marino many moons ago. They obviously didn't get. They get it this time with Kenny Pickett. So that needs to be. That part of the story needs to be out front here. It's a celebration. It is the Steelers' first round draft pick. Local kid, quarterback, blonde hair. I mean, just everything that goes along with that. It really is a good feel good story. So kudos to him. And that'll be interesting to watch his NFL journey get underway. Definitely. And the Steelers hopefully have the next franchise quarterback. And they don't draft quarterbacks in the first round too often. And so this is going to be, pretty historical moment, hopefully in a good way. But regardless of how things turn out, it's going to be a historical chapter, or at least note in that chapter of the Pittsburgh Steelers book. So to see the emotion from Kenny Pickett and his family last night was really cool, just on a personal level, forgetting about like what you think about the prospect and the outlook and all that aside for a moment. Just getting to see any player drafted in the NFL is really special. But for Pickett to stay, where he played his college ball, he's from Jersey, but he's obviously played at Pitt. Someone was cutting onions in my house last night, Dave. I'll put it that way. I hear you. It was quite a scene to see, him hugging his dad. I think he had said in that podcast interview with that was it a former Pitt player? Who was the guy on the couch? Adam Brennan, I think. He played football. I don't know his whole story, but something like that. Yeah, but anyway, he said Kenny Pickett said one of the first things, if he's QB1 or really a first round quarterback, was to make sure he retires his dad and all like that. So he obviously should be able to do that. So without a doubt, it is a monumental moment overall, especially when it does come to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because shoot, even in my lifetime, how many times had the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted a quarterback in the first round? You had obviously Bradshaw in 70. You had Mark Malone in 80. You had Ben Roethlisberger in 2004, and now you have Kenny Pickett. So once again, that's another thing that needs to be set off to the side. Monumental thing here, and look, the the thought, at least on my end, I'm sure yours as well too, and most of the off season, especially with the due diligence that the Steelers did at the quarterback position here, was it was going to be quite surprising, at least to me, if this team did not draft a quarterback in the first round for all the many reasons that we gave throughout this thing. And people thinking it was a smoke screen. I just don't know why there was the pushback there. It felt it all the way. And then, man, you get through the first, 13, 14 picks of that draft. Well, even through the first 8 picks last night, making it past the Falcons pick there. The growing sense at that point is, man, this is really going to happen. Now, I thought the really is going to happen was that Malik Willis was going to be the pick at that point. And but we also wondered before this thing, if the Steelers stay put at 20, will we ever really know who their quarterback 1 was? Well, in a sense, yeah, we do. I mean, it's obviously Kenny Pickett was their QB1. In the same breath, though, there's a part of me that wonders, where was the conviction? Well, I think we sort of got a little bit of an answer on that to some degree. I was really expecting this team, if they liked a quarterback, as that much, and one that got close enough to them that they would trade up to get that quarterback. And it does, Kevin Colbert's obviously going to tell you one thing, but it sounds like coming out of some of these other beat reporters, I think Brooks, what's his last name? Writes for the
Cabana. It looks like.
Writes for the Houston Chronicle, says that Texans GM Nick Caserio says the Texans had a chance to move from 15 to number 20, but they were going to miss out on a group of players they liked, and it made most sense to take the pick there. So, Kevin Colbert mentioned that they were looking to move up, even when when the Saints were, I think, on the clock. They were probably worried at that point with the Saints picking right ahead of them that maybe that was because I think you had even stated that it looked like the Saints it wasn't so much a worriment about them maybe taking Malik Willis at that part because it seemed like they had done most of their homework on Kenny Pickett there. But look, the Steelers got the best of both worlds there. They got their QB1, and they didn't have to move anywhere or give up any draft capital to get them. So at least we don't have that question of who was their QB1 because we know the answer to that now.
Right. And that was, to me, the most interesting part of the whole, what happened last night was all the quarterbacks falling, and kudos to you because I know you were the one who talked about, could these quarterbacks fall? You thought these quarterbacks could fall, and ultimately only one went in the first round, and that was Pickett at 20. No Malik Willis, no Desmond Ridder, no Sam Howell, no Matt Corral in round number 1. They'll have to wait till today to hear their name called. And so just the historical nature, and Matthew Marks, you wrote about that this morning, about having just one quarterback go in the first round. This isn't the first time that's ever happened, and this happened back in 2016 or 2013 it was, I think, the EJ Manuel class, but it's just so rare for that to occur. And as you said, for Pittsburgh, we know they got their number 1 guy, right or wrong, if you like it or not, we can talk about that, and we will, but we know that Pittsburgh got their top quarterback in this class. There was zero doubt or hesitation or second thought about that.
We talked about this quarterback class the whole time, right? I mean, if anything, what this means is, our assessment, and really for the most part, most everybody's assessment of this quarterback class was right on. It's not that enthralling of a quarterback class. Now, I think that we would get to the point where just one quarterback would be off the board after the first round? No, I kind of envision 2, maybe 3. We can get into, there's plenty of time to speculate as to why a guy like Malik Willis fell. I got a lot of pushback throughout this thing saying, man, you're crazy for thinking that Malik Willis will fall. And I think it's just because the overall, he's not ready, I think it boils down to with several of these guys, or with Malik Willis specifically, the long game is potentially there. The upside is potentially there, but if you're drafting him in the first round, you have to have the perfect spot for him to be able to sit a year. And I think teams were looking at that and looking at the other talent in the draft, which, by the way, I could not help but think in the first round, man, this draft, first round draft class, or, the top 14, 15 picks outside of that, man, it just doesn't feel like a great class overall. Now it's good and deep at positions like, I think at edge and at wide receiver and stuff like that, but just kind of meh overall. But I think this does speak volumes about the quarterback class as a whole, and especially with the lone quarterback in the first round coming off the board at 20th overall. You do have to wonder, and it's really insignificant at this point, but had the Steelers even bypassed on the quarterback at 20th overall, does Kenny Pickett go in the first round? Does somebody make a move to go get him at that point? We'll obviously never know, but it does lead you to wonder, or it does give you some sort of confirmation here of kind of what the narrative has been most of the offseason is, man, this quarterback class ain't all that.
Sure. And we'll never know what could have happened had Pittsburgh passed and gone in a different direction. But just to the point about them taking a quarterback in general, I mean, we were pretty confident they were going to take a quarterback regardless of what other teams were going to do. And it was just trying to identify who that guy was. And I'll admit, I thought Malik Willis was going to be the number one guy, and I was wrong about that. And so what Tomlin Colbert cited last night was a comfort level with Pickett, his maturity, his pro readiness. The most common kind of adjective and description of Pickett attached to him is that pro readiness, the pro system that he ran. That's going to make him a guy that can't compete right away. And Tomlin Colbert made no bones about it, called it an open competition between Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett. And so this is a guy, and we'll see what happens, but he will have a legitimate chance to start week one.
If Kenny Pickett were a pizza.
Oh, goodness.
Look, it's comfort. It's comfort food here, right? It's the knowing what you're getting top to bottom overall here. I mean, obviously Kenny Pickett right next door to this team. They didn't have a lot of mystery about him, or none. And they've seen this kid off the field. They've seen him probably in some challenged moments, if you will. They've seen him react with his teammates. I mean, you want to talk about inside intel? They had it with him. I mean, you can't get any more inside intel than this team has had with him over the course of not just this past year, but his college career alone. So it's not risky from the standpoint of, man, you wonder about this with Kenny Pickett. Now the downside to that, obviously, and where the pushback has been with me, and I think with you as well too, and anybody whatsoever that could be viewed as poo-poo in this pick, if you will, is the fact that all along, Kenny Pickett seems to be what you see is what you get at this point in the story. It's hard to imagine that Kenny Pickett has not hit his ceiling overall at this point, because of all the time spent at Pittsburgh, all the games played, all like that. So now with that, you are, I think, alleviating concerns about the floor. How low is the floor? Mm-hmm. Because of all the things that I just said. But within all that, I think the gap between the floor and the ceiling is obviously the smallest of all, potentially of all the quarterbacks in this year's class. But then, once again, the concerns are, can he progress any from what we saw even at his best at the University of Pittsburgh there. And that's where the giant pushback is going to come at Kenny Pickett overall. Look, people have heard this all throughout this draft process, right? Who was probably the most NFL ready quarterback of the lot?
It was Kenny Pickett, and that's one of the few consensus points there were about this whole quarterback class.
Right. So, you get that aspect of it. Now, I don't know which way you want to go with this. Obviously Colbert and Tomlin say he'll be given every chance to compete, and he should. Whereas Malik Willis, and Matt Corral and Sam Howell. My thought on them was, man, if you draft any one of those guys are going to you're not going to be able to throw those guys on the field week one. Really, the only other quarterback that I would kind of deem more NFL ready that you could potentially do that with would have been Desmond Ridder. And you probably agree with that as well too there. But even more so with Kenny Pickett, because look, nothing's going to be really new to him other than just the NFL system and way of doing things and the game, the intricacies of the game. He's not going to have to worry about getting adjusted to a new city, new surroundings. Do I take a right or do I take a left? He knows all the aspects of Heinz Field. He's played in the cold weather. He's played in front of Steeler fans before, so to speak. So none of that's going to be new. So absolutely, this kid should get every opportunity here moving forward to be the week one starting quarterback here. And at worst, at this point now, you would think this guy is a lock to be the number 2 quarterback, you would think.
It was interesting to hear Mike Tomlin at one point in the presser last night use the word comfort. For a man that famously says he does not seek comfort, he sought comfort with Kenny Pickett. And I think, as you said, they knew Pickett the best. And even though they were at all these pro days and you had a dinner with presumably all these quarterbacks, we know they dined with Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, and they were brought in for pre-draft visits. There's still snapshots of who the guy is. There's still, you know him for a couple hours. And with Kenny Pickett, you knew him for years. He was next door. Pickett would talk about the conversations he would have occasionally post-practice with Tomlin. And I think that's probably one thing that drove the Steelers to Pickett in drafting him, because they knew him the most and they felt like there was probably less risk there because they just had a good feeling of who this guy was and the rare opportunity to draft somebody that you really kind of watched grow up. And that's pretty cool. But it also comes with the concern of, are they being too risk adverse there? Because as you said, What is the ceiling with Pickett's going to be the question. I don't think his game's maxed out. I don't think rarely does a college prospect, especially a quarterback, have their game maxed out. There are things that Pickett can and needs to work on, frankly, to become a better quarterback. Physically, he's probably pretty close to maxed out, but there's so much more to the game than that. But you guys know my thoughts.
He is going to have to become more. He's going to have to take more of the Tom Brady route than anything. And by that, I mean, he's really going to have to become a cerebral type guy. And and that's where I was going with maxed out, is the physical, everything, because we've seen him. Look, he can make all the throws. It's just sometimes you'd like to see more velocity on the throws. You'd like to see better decision making. He's not the most uber and fake slide against Wake Forest aside. He's not the most mobile quarterback of the of the group, but you can work with him outside of pocket. Plus with him obviously is all the motion they used at Pitt, which is obviously something that's not going to be new to him. He's worked under center some. That's not going to be new to him.
Right.
But the maxed out part is more what kind of you said, the physical aspect of it. Now, can he grow? Is there room for him to grow as a quarterback and have some upside from the mental aspect? Yeah, I think there is. And I think if this guy is going to be that Pro Bowl quarterback that gives you a chance to compete for some Super Bowls, he's going to have to make leaps and bounds with knowing the game better than any other quarterback, in the AFC.
Sure. No, I understand that. But I think Pickett would say, and he said last night, just to play devil's advocate, is that he took a big leap this past year, and he did. I mean, he threw 41 touchdowns last year for the Panthers and really had that breakout season. I think in part because he got healthy, he had some injury issues in years prior, but I'm sure he would argue that he can take another leap this time around. And I know the concerns with him and the two biggest, well, I shouldn't say the two biggest, but two concerns that some analysts have with Pickett. I have no concerns about the hand size, not worried about, and the age. I'm not worried about it. And if anything, I think the age worked in his favor because it's the older quarterback in this class. He's 24. He's more mature. He's just been around football more. And again, that kind of led to the Steelers, in their word, comfort with taking Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and Kevin Colbert says much too. He said, and I don't believe it, but he told the story about they were talking about his hand size, and Colbert says, I didn't know that. I mean, you got to know that. I'm calling BS on that aspect of it there, but I
don't know. That might be too analytical for Kevin Colbert.
Yeah,
it might be like, I don't know these fancy numbers and inches. Yeah,
what is this tape measure you speak of?
I just watched the tape, my own two eyes, all the tape measure I need.
Yeah, that's a good pun there. But that's not a concern to them. And look, coming off of the year with Joe, with Joe Burrow and all like that, and all the talk about the hand size with him, and 2 years into his career, he's playing in a Super Bowl, right? So, right. And look to the. You want to talk about guys with arm limitation. One of the things that sticks out the most to me with him, with looking at all of this tape, is the overall arm strength. And the hand size is not going to help that. Okay, I don't think. One of my biggest concerns with him is the velocity. As you stated, the carriage of the football has got to get better because of the hand size and his ability to put that football down the field. And if there's one thing that we know out of all the tape so far with Kenny Pickett in college, is his deep ball lacks, man. I mean, there's no two ways around it. And I'd put it up there with lacking, like Desmond Ridder. One of the things I was concerned about Desmond Ridder was that overall arm strength. For as much as that guy's played, for as much as Kenny Pickett has played, I think we kind of see the limitations, of those guys. And that worries you from the aspect of people say, well, Dave, what do you expect them to do? Throw the football down the field more than 50 yards four or five times a game? No, absolutely not. But when you need it, you need it, and the threat of it is another aspect of it that can make a difference in coverages and everything that goes along with that. So, I think and where I was going with this is, at least we saw with Joe Burrow in his second season, was he was able to connect down the field. Now, having a guy like Jamar Chase running past people sure does help you out a little bit. And the Steelers are going to have to solve that problem next, and maybe they will in day 2 of the draft there, because I just don't believe with what they have right now gives them the vertical threat that this team needs right now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the limitations overall with Kenny Pickett, are concerning, I think.
I think the two biggest things he needs to work on, as you mentioned, as I wrote about my quarterback rankings weeks ago, is the carriage of the football. I think that was one of the bigger reasons why he fumbled the ball. And he did fumble the ball quite a bit. I think, 36 or 38 times in his career. He did play a lot of football too. So there's probably a relativity that needs to be considered for that. But I saw the fumbling issue. Whenever he starts to move in the pocket, the ball's going to drop on his hip and swing and not be tight to his body. And I don't care if your hand size is 8.5 or 9 or 10.5 inches. If you got a 280 pounder coming at your hand when you get the ball hanging down, you're going to lose the football. So that's going to be one thing that he can clean up, but needs to be cleaned up. And that'll be something Mike Sullivan will have to work with him on. The other thing is probably just his overall pocket presence. And in terms of him bailing on clean pockets and drifting in the pocket, not hitching up consistently is going to be the biggest thing for him. He is a functionally mobile quarterback, but he will have to primarily work from the pocket in the NFL. So if he can work on those things, then I think you're going to see some progression and growth in his game, because physically, you're right. I think he's about maxed out, and you can work with that. It's not that the physical tool set is completely lacking, but he will have to work on, I think, some of the more, mechanical type things within the pocket to really take the next step to his game.
You got a quarterback coach, an experienced quarterback coach in Mike Sullivan, right?
And now a maybe dedicated assistant as well with David Corley.
Right. So here's the thing too, and people say, well, Kenny Pickett was able to extend some plays and avoid some rushes and those kind of things at Pitt. The problem is, what I notated as a lot of the problem with some of those plays is it shouldn't have gotten to the point where he was having to extend some of those plays, because I saw him miss a lot of kind of initial reads that he probably should have got the football out that he didn't, that led to him having to extend the play. In other words, he was his own worst enemy when it came to some of that stuff. Now the good news is he overcame that and he made the play on several of those. But are you going to be able to do that in the NFL level?
Yeah, but I would say I think he, of all the quarterbacks I watched, consistently made those pro reads and went through progressions and read the defense overall well. So there is some of that. You're always going to get that with quarterbacks who may occasionally miss a read and end up scrambling and things like that. But I thought overall, this guy understands how a pro offense needs to be run because he ran it. And what he did at Pitt is going to be pretty similar in terms of just kind of foundational schematics to what Matt Canada wants to run. And that, to me, probably had a fairly big influence on why Pickett was the pick, especially coming off a 2021 season when there was such a awkwardness in terms of the fit between Ben and Canada. Just totally different in terms of what Ben's capable of doing and his strengths were to what Canada wants to accomplish. An under center offense, a lot of play action, a lot of boots and rollouts and, rack throws, deep middle of the field type throws. None of that was in Ben's wheelhouse. All of that is certainly much more natural and comfortable to Kenny Pickett. And so from a offensive fit standpoint, schematically, it's a really good fit.
And look, a lot of people, because of the guy that he's coming in on the coattails of, and Ben Roethlisberger, especially thinking back to Ben Roethlisberger's early years, Ben became Ben real quick. And Ben became the Ben he kind of was at Miami of Ohio real quick. Big Ben, right? Being able to avoid and shrug off some of the pass rushers and kind of make those extended plays even outside the pocket. That's not what you're buying with Kenny Pickett.
No, you're going to get somebody that's going to work within structure, within the pocket more often. Can he extend the play? He made some great throws running to his right this past year, a couple of touchdowns that he had. So he's more comfortable running to his right, as most quarterbacks, I'm sure, are. But obviously, you're not getting Ben. I don't think anyone's expecting Pickett to win in the way that Ben won, especially early in his career.
Overall with accuracy, not bad. He's certainly not afraid of the middle of the field from what I've seen there. I think he's okay on third down type situation. In fact, we got some studies coming up on Steelers Deep on the statistical aspect there, but we'll have plenty of time to break him down. We've got all of his all 22 from last season and all like that. It just it's just more what you see, I think, is what you get. And the big question with him, and we'll obviously be looking at this as his NFL career progresses and he gets, takes over the starting job and all like that, is how much more can he progress from where it appears to be his ceiling is at right now? Right.
The question is, what is best case scenario for Kenny Pickett? Can he turn into a top 10 quarterback in a best case scenario?
Right. And that's the big question with him.
Yeah. And I'm not sure I think that's probably like the legitimately best case scenario is if it goes up perfect, he becomes like a top 10 quarterback, but like in that 10th spot. And is that enough to win in an AFC that has top 5 guys, top 3 guys? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the concern. But I will say, and listen, you guys know my thoughts on Pickett. I'm not going to change my thoughts or my evaluation on Pickett just because he's now wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. He was my number 4 quarterback. I put a 2nd-round grade on him. Would I have drafted Kenny Pickett at 20 personally? No. None of that ultimately matters. But those are my thoughts. But I will say, and I mentioned this a couple times, I think in some of our draft round tables and discussions that we had, what Pickett, where he excelled the most, and you mentioned it a moment ago, was situational football. 3rd down, red zone. Clayton did the red zone study several months ago, and Pickett, I believe, by far was the best quarterback of this class in terms of red zone efficiency and overall productivity. And to me, that situational football can be a really good window into seeing how well a guy may make the jump to the NFL. You know, red zone windows are smaller, tighter, and that's what you're going to consistently see at the NFL level. And so it'll be a good kind of case study to see, does that production translate? But where Pickett really shined last year was 3rd down red zone, and that is something certainly working well in his favor.
Right. And he's going to have to be money in those areas for sure. I mean, look, just situational football in general, yeah. But if he's going to maximize what he is, especially early on in his career, that's really where he's going to have to excel. And I just, my fears are all, me and the big explosive plays, right? I don't think you can win week in, week out in the NFL or long term without having the ability to stretch the football down the football field through the air. You can't, you go back to things, you could see the end coming to how they were trying to cater to Ben Roethlisberger with the old, what Randy Fichtner used to say, throw short, run long. I mean, that all sounds real good, but how many explosive plays are you going to expect to get throughout a season with catching a 5-yard pass and running another 15 yards after the catch?
Sure.
You've got to be able to push the football down the field. Now, to his credit, Kenny Pickett was, I guess, okay, 19 yards down the field and all like that. Where I really wonder is how is he going to be able to push the football down the field outside the numbers, more than 25, 30 yards down the field. And sure. If anybody could sit here and pound the table a little bit harder, maybe than the rest of it, is maybe me, because if I remember going back and look at all of our quarterback ratings that we did, several weeks ago, I think I was the only one. I think I had Kenny Pickett ranked the highest of the lot.
Right. And then I think you ended up shifting him.
Well, yeah. I said I would not draft him. I said I would pull him off my draft board regardless of my ratings. Right. And I went into this thing, quite honestly, with hope against hope that Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder would not be the Steelers' choice at quarterback. Now, why is that? It's because of the long-term aspect of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the upside, the potential idea of it all. But I mean, obviously, I think Pittsburgh's vertical offense should be better this year, if only because it can't be much worse. I mean, Pickett's arm is better than where Ben's arm was at these last 2 seasons.
Oh, and yeah, so, without a doubt. I mean, look,
low bar, I know.
Right, Ben, but where was the bar at, right?
No, yeah, so it's a low bar, sure. But I mean, there will be an improvement, to what degree, and will it be good enough, are all good and outstanding questions. But you will have a chance to work more vertical and hopefully work the middle of the field more often as well, because Ben famously, and we know it was Ben. It was not even an offensive schematic thing. Ben just did not want to throw deep down the middle of the field. And I think Pickett is much more willing and capable of doing it.
And we're going to have a lot of time on our hands after these next couple weeks here, where we get into the end of May and into June, though. But we'll chart all this stuff. But one of the things that does, much like the inaccuracy, just of a guy like Desmond Ridder that just jumped off the tape to a guy like me, Kenny Pickett, middle of the field, he's not afraid to throw that. Now, obviously, I think there's more of a range for him, more of like in the 8 to 8 to 15 yard range, but that's perfect. That's an area that Ben just wouldn't seem to want to touch later on, especially later on in his career here. So the things I'll be looking for as Kenny Pickett moving forward is, man, can he push the football down the field? And can he, his mechanics, his footwork needs to get better. His carriage of the football obviously needs to get better. And can he become one of the most cerebral quarterbacks in the NFL? Because I think that's going to go a long way for him to be able to consistently win. And, I think overall too, when you look at, it's too bad. Can we pay an upgrade fee to get the Jordan Addison upgrade package here with them? Just, how many really tight window throws do you remember him making, especially this past season?
Yeah, I'd have to. I can't quantify that, obviously. I don't know how many he made, but again, I do think he made those pro style reads. I'll have an article on that hopefully later today, if not maybe during the week after the draft weekend settles. But I think he has that pro readiness is not supposed to be a knock. I mean, he is a smart quarterback. He can decipher a defense. They use a lot of motion, and that's all going to play well in Pittsburgh.
And with the mobility thing being such a hot thing out of Tomlin's mouth, that's another aspect. And, everybody will continue to point to that fake slide, which I think was absolutely fantastic. But Kenny Pickett's not going to be, anywhere close to kind of what you kind of envisioned Tomlin was getting at when talking about quarterback mobility. And no, we're not talking about zone reads all the time and that kind of stuff, but just being able to produce and use that mobility, to be able to escape pressure and make plays when something else isn't there. That's kind of a concerning aspect, I think, when it comes to Pickett.
No, I think he can do that. I think he showed that in college. I think he's functionally mobile, probably a tick above. I mean, if you put him on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of mobility, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, I think he's probably in that 6 range. I think it's pretty similar to Joe Burrow in terms of just overall movement and athleticism. It's a little awkward-ish at times, but I think he's functional and can run and can scramble and extend the play well overall. He's not going to be, Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson or obviously what Malik Willis is capable of. But, Colbert talked about not putting so much stock in the mobility that's all that you value. And Pickett kind of seems to be that middle ground of mobile enough, can run, but it's not going to be the focal point of his game. And to his credit, when this guy moves, he keeps his eyes downfield. He's not running to take off. He's running to escape, to create the buy time and find an open receiver downfield. And he did that, I think, often at Pitt.
Where would you rank him in these 5 quarterbacks when it comes to mobility?
Like I said, it's Malik Willis, kind of number 1, and then the rest. Howe is probably the second most mobile guy. I would probably put Corral third, and then, Pickett might be in that bottom tier, but it's a mobile class overall. I mean, they're all mobile quarterbacks. There are no statues. And so I forget exactly what Pickett ran, like a 4.6 something, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's similar to Trubisky in terms of that, functionally mobile. It's not going to be that they're going to be scrambling and juking guys out of their shoes and no more fake slides are happening, obviously, but mobility or lack thereof to me is really not a concern. It fits what Canada wants to do.
All right. So what does this mean to the other quarterbacks in the quarterback room now?
Well, I mean, it means the competition's even more uncertain. Trubisky went from the front runner, the favorite, to, we'll see what happens. Will Rudolph get the job? It's hard to see a scenario, barring injury, where Rudolph becomes your starting quarterback week 1, but Pickett will now have that opportunity, and it'll be up to Pittsburgh to try to get those guys enough reps and evaluation, because you have a new face in Trubisky and a rookie in Kenny Pickett trying to get reps. You're trying to learn about them. They're trying to get down your system. And so Pittsburgh divvies up those reps, opportunities in camp's going to be interesting, because you have 2 guys who need as many reps as possible.
Absolutely. And you would have to think that they are fairly comfortable knowing what Mason Rudolph is and isn't right now. So those, I tell you what I would do at this point. And, obviously people say, well, no way they could get this or get that. I'd see about dealing Mason Rudolph away for a bag of footballs and a fifth or sixth, whatever you can get for him at this point, man. If you could get and it might be reaching a little bit here, but look, there's teams around the league that need a backup quarterback. Could you get a 5th round draft pick, today for Mason Rudolph?
I don't know. My guess is that you would struggle to get that, but I don't know. As you said, it's a quarterback needy, quarterback starved world. What I would do with Rudolph is that I would wait till right before, a late summer trade potentially. Some quarterback gets hurt, another team. You want to obviously see how Pickett looks before you start thinking about moving a guy like Rudolph and protect yourself versus injury. Say somebody gets hurt early in camp, knock on wood, but you want to protect yourself that way. But I think maybe there'll be potentially more demand and value and more flexibility to deal Rudolph hypothetically if you go into the summer, getting close to week 1 when some backup quarterback gets hurt or whatever the case is, some starter gets hurt. Now the backup's a starter, they need another backup. That's where you might have the opportunity to actually get some value out of Mason Rudolph.
And here's the other thing, boy, with right after they drafted Pickett, man, I really like your plan of taking a guy like Chris Oladuncan late now because yeah, you could go back to 2004 and you say, boy, look at how that played out with the injuries and all like that. You want to protect yourself and keep as many experienced quarterbacks on the roster as you can, yada, yada. But are you expecting Pickett to at worst be the number 2 quarterback? Does it feel like you haven't done something right if you can't at least get to the end of camp and Pickett be the number 2? Because this is different than Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger is obviously a lot younger and that kind of thing there. So, you can understand the way, as Kevin Colbert tells the story, how things were potentially going to go with Roethlisberger. The plan was for him to be the number 3 quarterback and not play it down, all that kind of stuff there. But you've got a guy that's played a lot of football games. In fact, if there's anything that you want, another positive you want to hang your hat on when it comes to Kenny Pickett, is he checks all the Bill Parcells boxes, that we got off the cave wall. And I realize that's extremely outdated at this part now in today's NFL and everything that goes along with that. But man, Bill Parcells used to live and die by several of those things, and makes you kind of wonder, how much the Kevin Colbert subscribed to that, because a lot of what the Bill Parcells 7 rules are is eliminating a lot of the risk factor, right?
Right. Going with the senior, going with the guy that won, going with the known.
The guy that graduated, showed enough dedication to accomplish things outside of that, so the completion percentage. And, this obviously wasn't a situation where Kenny Pickett did this at a Liberty or a Miami of Ohio. No disrespect to Miami of Ohio fans out there, but he did this in the ACC. He did it against a lot of games against notable competition, Power 5 competition, if you will, on top of it. So that's another at least little thing that you got going for you. And I think this boils down to some of the things we said early in this podcast. There is at least you think what the floor is with him, and you think that what the ceiling is, and obviously you don't draft a guy thinking, well, that's it, that's him, he's not going to progress any more than that. But at least you've got a good idea, maybe if it is his ceiling, of what that ceiling is, if that makes sense.
Sure. I get it. And listen, Pickett was, I think, the easiest evaluation, the cleanest product to try to predict and project. But I always kind of crinkle my nose when I talk about high floors and this guy's low risk and things like that, because these guys all have risk, and the guys you think are safe turn out to be busts as often as the guys you think are big risks. And so you do genuinely have not gotten much sleep last night, as you guys can tell, wonder what the ceiling is with Pickett, because again, you're in an AFC with some really competitive top quarterbacks in football and guys who will be here for a long time: Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Watson. Wilson won't be here maybe quite as long, but still obviously newcomer to the AFC coming over to Denver. You guys know the list. Herbert, so many others. Whatever young guys develop, a Lawrence, Tua, who knows? And so can Pickett elevate his game to be in that same breath is going to be the question. And to me, that is the number one question about Kenny Pickett.
I mean, we understand why the team went this way. I didn't expect them to go this way.
Sure.
And really, to be honest with you, I really didn't think if they stayed at 20 that Kenny Pickett would be on the board at 20 overall. And to hear Kevin Colbert talk, they didn't think that was going to be the case either. So, but it was, and here you go.
Yeah, that's all that matters. I really thought New Orleans would be taking him because they had 2 first-round picks. I thought they were going to go tackle and they were going to go with a quarterback and Pickett. And it sounds like maybe Pittsburgh thought the same, looking to trade up there at number 15 to jump the Saints at number 16. So I
thought the Panthers were. I thought from the moment that pro day in Pittsburgh took place, I thought the Panthers were going to be all over them.
Yeah, they
at
obviously
6.
Yeah, all the tackles fell. It was interesting to see the tackles fall. It was so defense heavy, top 5, all defensive players there. That kind of put some of those tackles in the Panthers' lap, and so we'll see.
Here's another quick way to look at this. And obviously we still have a lot to talk about here, though. Was there at that point in time at 20th overall, was there anybody else on the board at that time that throw out who regardless of the name of the quarterback? Was there any other position or any other guy on the board that time that you would have liked to seen that obviously matched up with Pro Day and Power 5 and any other non-quarterback at that time at 20th overall that you really could have made a solid argument that you had been banging the table for?
There really wasn't, to be honest. I mean, there were names you can throw out there, of course. The safeties that went the back end of round 1 in Dax Hill and Lewis Cine. I think those guys fit, but was I banging the table to get those guys? No. Jordan Davis goes to the Eagles. Kyle Hamilton goes to Baltimore. It's fun watching him twice a year for the next decade. But no, there really wasn't that guy. And so I knew at that point, the odds of quarterback went up exponentially because the board broke so perfectly for Pittsburgh. Literally any quarterback they could choose, anyone that they wanted, they could have had. And obviously Pickett was their guy. So I'm not sitting here today going, man, I really wish the team would have taken X player who was sitting there right in their lap at number 20.
Right. And that's kind of the point I'm talking about here. Mm-hmm. We always like to do these exercises after the fact and look back at the draft 5 years previously and stuff like that. The biggest rub at this point is did they make the right decision with the right quarterback?
Right.
Versus the others that were on the board, because they had a lot of them. So even if Kenny Pickett doesn't become 2-time Super Bowl, 1-time Super Bowl winning or all pro or Pro Bowl or whatever, as long as he remains the better quarterback of the lot of 5 moving forward, then the right decision was made. Because that's what I'm getting at here is I think if you look at where they were at 20th overall at that point, and you look at all the other factors that we look at going into these things, Kevin Colbert, Pro Day, Power 5, non-quarter, if it's a non-quarterback, everybody all knows the parameters of a Kevin Colbert first-round draft pick at this point. When you look at it right now, I'm with you. There's nobody else at that point that you're banging the table for. I mean, we talked about Lewis Cine, and I'm convinced if they had not gone quarterback at that point, I really think it was Lewis Cine who ended up going 32nd overall. And I guess the other person you maybe put in there is Dax Hill, who went 31st overall to the Bengals. Isn't that funny? There we got looking at people in the AFC now, a couple of guys that you kind of envision maybe potentially being on the Steelers board there. But I think this will always be moving forward, and it should be at this point, is not Kenny Pickett versus any other positional player. It's Kenny Pickett versus the rest of the quarterback class now at this point.
Sure.
That's it. That's the measuring stick.
And that's usually how these things get evaluated with the top quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, to answer the question, I would have taken a different quarterback other than Pickett, but Pittsburgh took Pickett. He was the number one guy. And so we'll see what happens. But, I understood why Pickett was their guy. And I by no means did not call this selection, but in my mock draft, I was kind of thinking if Pickett would fall, I was going to consider him more. Ultimately, I did not mock him there, so I was not correct in that. But again, we knew their interest in quarterback was sky high. We knew that if the board broke, they were going to go quarterback, and they ultimately did.
Well, I didn't think they were going to go Kenny Pickett. I did not even think if they traded up, they would trade up for Kenny Pickett. That aspect there is, other than the proverbial, if they don't go Malik Willis, it's going to be one of the other four quarterbacks. That's really the only way I was kind of thinking, Kenny Pickett in the equation. Let's say Malik and let's say Ritter would have went off the board or something like that. Then maybe I would have been in a realm. Well, here comes Kenny Pickett,
Right.
aspect of it there. But I really didn't give much overall thought, to be honest with you, that Kenny Pickett was QB1 for them.
But he was, and like you said, the best thing for us on a personal level to come out of this was like we know that Pickett is the number one guy. There's no question
there's no
about
doubt.
that. And so that in some way maybe is comforting just to know like this, we know that this is their guy. There is no question about it.
All right, we'll have plenty of time to break him down and talk more about that.
Yeah. All right, Dave, let's do a quick preview of some options for day two. Friday's draft starting 7 p.m. Eastern time. Obviously, Pittsburgh picking twice today at pick 52 and pick 84, second and third round respectively. Who are some names to look out for?
Oh, man, I think you hit a bunch of them. And I'm going to be surprised if it goes outside of kind of what you have laid out there and kind of the names that we've kind of been talking about this thing. I mean, Sky Moore of Western Michigan's out there. The only thing you kind of wonder is, that 5'10" mark. You got to be this high to ride. Is Kevin Colbert going to be willing to go under that number? That's one of the main reasons why I could not put Sky Moore in my final mock, is because I use a lot of historical data, and that's it. Now, everything else obviously matches up. And boy, you want to talk about what having a theme to this draft early on. You get the kid that played at Pitt, and then you get the kid from Pitt in the second round. So you can really envision that happen. I know a lot of Steeler fans are probably hoping that happens. It's probably him and Connor Hayward are probably two of the guys that if you were to poll Steeler fans are probably most rooting for to be drafted, and probably for lack of a better word, Kenny Pickett, because of all the Pitt fans, on top of it there. But then, as you laid out there, Sky Moore, George Pickens out of Georgia still on the board. Danny Gray, the link there's easy, Senior Bowl, guy that can, probably function, in one of the three positions wherever you need him to. Had Frisman Jackson at the pro day and all like that. Daniel Falele out of Minnesota, which you mentioned because of the sheer fact that the Steelers had their offensive line coach, Pat Meyer, at that pro day. He's kind of in that second round grade wheelhouse, if you will. The Ohio State tackle, okay, I kind of get that. Nicholas Petit Frere, DeMarvin Leal, Texas A&M defensive lineman, because of Carl Dunbar being at that pro day. Now, there was the report yesterday, right, by Aaron Wilson, stating that they spent a little bit extra time with Peavy, the other defensive lineman there, and I put Peavy in, I think, the sixth round on my draft, so he obviously wouldn't be in play, I don't think, in the second or third round. Thomas Booker out of Stanford, another defensive lineman. Brandon Smith, linebacker at Penn State. Obviously, the Steelers had a huge presence there at the Penn State Pro Day. Drake Jackson and edge you have there. Now, obviously, it's a long way for them to go out there, but we have seen them draft second-round picks. Most notably Juju Smith-Schuster, right, where we think, man, they didn't have much contact with him during the pre-draft process, but this team could certainly use another edge rusher. Marcus Jones, the the slot, the cornerback out of Houston with a couple of banged up shoulders there is obviously an easy link back to Pittsburgh. Brisker out of Penn State, the safety board. The Steelers went safety in the second or third round. You've got the boxes checked here, Alex. Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State and Nick Cross out of Maryland. Two guys that have been, in our sights, I think, for several weeks now. Obviously, most specifically since the pro day circuit got underway here. So. You have in total here in your post, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 names in total. I'd be pretty surprised if it's not one of those 12 names.
I hope so. I want to feel a little bit smarter, feel like I'm contributing something. But and this was not supposed to be an exhaustive list, but maybe you could even put the guy you mentioned, Damari Mathis, in their round 3 from Pitt. That potential slot corner, I think, fits well. Just go with the whole Panthers theme here in this draft. So yeah, in terms of positional need, slot receiver, safety, maybe tackle, maybe D-line if they're that concerned about Tuitt or want to get younger up front. DeMarvin Leal could be an option. I think at 52 or potentially even 84. His stock seemed to quote unquote slip here a little bit. So a lot of that was just stock connecting. Some of that was trying to pick some names we haven't talked about quite as much, like a Brandon Smith from Penn State, like a Thomas Booker from Stanford potentially, I think in round number 3. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, sure. Wanted to list some options for day 2 in that article on Steelers Depot.
And look, there's obviously not as many restrictions that that we put on potential guys being the pick as we do the first round picks. But within that, if it's not an underclassman that seems to be trending upward highly, so to speak, then you would expect it to be a Senior Bowl guy.
Yeah, usually they get one underclassman somewhere early in drafts. And so you think maybe one of these 2 picks will be an underclassman. But if not, usually they're going to go with that senior, as you said, Senior Bowl, All-Star game kind of guy.
Now, within that is the whole Brisker thing and kind of wondering what happened there that he didn't, that's one of the things that kind of kept me, even though he was in my first mock draft. I kind of wondered, man, what is it the injury? What's the deal with him not going to Senior Bowl, and how will that sit with Kevin Colbert and them?
Fair point, but I will say what's interesting with the Steelers drafting Kenny Pickett was the Pickett opted out of his bowl game, and we thought in the past maybe Pittsburgh wouldn't take guys who opted out of stuff and didn't compete, quote unquote. But obviously they were not concerned with Pickett opting out. Now I know his coach left, Mark Whipple, goes to Nebraska, and so there was a lot going on there, but whatever that's worth.
Right.
So that's day 2. What's your overall reaction to day 1 of the NFL draft, just at large? Trevon Walker, number 1 overall pick, Aiden Hutchinson, talk about hometown stories. He stays home with Detroit, defense heavy at the top. Any thoughts just about what round 1 brought the NFL?
Real quick to add a name to your list, a couple of names maybe to your list there, especially at the wide receiver position. And some of these, you would think there's going to be another run on wide receivers here in this round, especially with as deep as this class is. Christian Watson, small school kid, another small school kid, Jalen Tolbert, a couple of guys there that, potentially I think could maybe be that guy.
Yeah, I don't know about Watson. They have enough height, weight, speed types on the roster, the outside guys with Claypool and Boykin. Maybe. I mean, I get it. I would get it. And Tolbert is kind of that James Washington type. So I would understand that. But I do wonder, are they going to look more for a slot type of guy?
And if you're looking at slot specifically, Sky Moore he leaps off of this thing right now at this point. Now, Pickens was more another underclassman, more of an X. I think during his freshman season, he played a handful of snaps, maybe in the slot. But Pickens is the more versatile of him and Moore, but Moore has the continual kind of track record, if you will, in the slot, yards after the catch. And even though he is under 5'10", he's got the thickness to him, that you'd kind of hope that he'd have, and that kind of stuff, that goes along with that. So, and obviously the links back to Pittsburgh and the Steelers. You want to talk about more comfort? We're probably, this automatically becomes the comfort draft if if Sky Moore ends up being the pick. And look, these undersized slot guys kind of get pushed down at times too, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I think he'll be there at 52. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but it's a deeper receiver class, as you said. And so a 5'9" slot receiver from the MAC probably will be there in the second round at 52.
If that's the case, and if Pickens is off the board, and Pickens, I think, probably has the more likelihood to be off the board than Moore, because Pickens is that kind of prototypical X that a lot of teams look for. You know what you're at least getting with him is an X. And yeah, he's coming off the injury, but he did have the pro day to kind of show. And obviously that last game to show that he's beyond his injury and all like that there. So, yeah, I mean, this could turn into the Pittsburgh comfort draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers in day two in a hurry.
Mike Tomlin talked about the regional dining he did. I think he's a soul food guy. He wants the comfort food. He wants just the big piece of cornbread or whatever. But yeah, I think Moore certainly, and Moore can beat press coverage. Like so many college receivers, they never even seen press coverage, let alone know how to beat press coverage, because everyone's playing off coverage with all the spread systems and stack sets and things like that. These cornerbacks aren't comfortable rolling up, but Moore knows how to beat press coverage. His release package is excellent, and that makes him, again, going back to the projection, an easier projection to make.
Hey, and when you're talking about a guy like Kenny Pickett too, where you probably need to give him as many underneath options as possible, and quick slot play, Sky Moore definitely works into that, as opposed to having somebody that you're going to run in the Z and run 35 yards down the field.
Yeah, so should be interesting day two. Again, picks 52 and 84, second and third round. So just to go back to day one overall, any overarching thoughts, not about Pittsburgh, but just the overall day one of the draft, picks you like, picks you didn't like, surprised you, etc.?
I thought there was a lot more uncertainty in, let's say, the top 10 picks. Normally, even from an outsider's type of view, I tend to have a better sense of who's going to maybe go where. Now overall, are there any real big surprises as far as first round picks? I don't think so, right? I mean, was there anybody?
Cole Strange to me was a big surprise.
Go. Right. And leave it to the Patriots to be that
right.
That team that did that. But I mean, other than that, I mean, is there anybody that you go, wow, look at that guy in the first round?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest wow of the night. I think just overall, you saw defense go heavy, top 5 picks, and the tackles went. And so Carolina, the Giants, Seattle getting some really good value there at tackle to get the receiver run a little bit as well. The Giants.
Obviously, the trading away of multiple receivers here. I mean, Hollywood Brown and AJ Brown being dealt. I mean, that that's obviously significant portion of this thing, but I think that does play into the fact that, man, look at all these wide receivers becoming more fungible, Alex?
Yeah, I think teams are in two camps, either that we're willing to pay or we're not willing to pay. And you're seeing more of that latter camp where teams are saying, man, these prices are too crazy. There are so many good receivers in drafts. Let's go get somebody. And that's what the Titans did. They trade away AJ Brown. They want to give him $16 million. He wants $22 million. They say, we're not going to pay that. We'll go draft somebody who has a similar skill set to you in Trey Burks and hope that he's the next AJ Brown who we're going to get cheap, and repeat that cycle for for the next decade plus. And so that is the philosophy that's emerging that some teams have. But I'll say Baltimore, and they fleeced Arizona. I got a first round pick for Hollywood Brown. You kidding me? That's a great deal for Baltimore. And they draft Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, good point.
So I think the Ravens had a good draft. They always have a good draft. They always take the guys that I like. And that the Giants might have gotten the best offensive lineman and defensive lineman in the entire class in Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. And they got about 5 and 7. I mean, to me, you cannot do a better job than that.
Let me see. Guys that I had going in the first round in my kind of mock first round that didn't go. Nakobe Dean's still on the board, right?
Yes, it was Quay Walker became the first off-ball linebacker taken, and he went to Green Bay.
I think Kaiir Elam out of Florida is still on the board. Logan Hall.
No, he was taken to Buffalo.
Okay, all right. So I got that one. Logan Hall, he's still on the board, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The edge that you like, Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, still on the board?
Yeah, I thought he'd be a round one guy. I think he's going to be excellent value day 2.
Andrew Booth Jr. still on the board.
That's a surprise. I thought he was going to be one of the top corners taken.
Did George Karlaftis went, right?
Yeah, 30th to KC.
And what about Trent McDuffie? I think he's still on the board, is he not?
No, he went 21 to Kansas City.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah, Kyler Gordon's still on the board, the other Washington corner.
Okay, that's where. So in total, my mock draft, I had Dean, Logan Hall, Ebiketie, and Booth going in the first round. I think those are the 4 names that I missed out of possibly having all 32, selections, obviously not in the right place, but, I had Malik Willis in the first round as well too. So 5.
Okay. That's pretty good out of 32. That's a solid hit rate, I would say.
Right.
Do you have Tyler Smith in your first round? Or no, that was one of the guys that wasn't, I guess, of the 5.
Right.
Okay.
I'm talking about guys I had in there.
That,
That, and obviously I missed the ones that weren't in there. So.
Right. Smith was a little surprising. I guess he's going to move to guard for Dallas. I think Dallas wanted Zion Johnson. The Chargers take him, and so Dallas kind of takes the next offensive lineman.
So I would say, you ask about surprises. I would say the surprises are, or at least to me, were some of the order of some of these guys went, and not overly shocking, I don't think, overall. The fact that only one quarterback went in the first round is a bit shocking to me. I envision at least 2 or 3 going, and the trade of the wide receivers. I think that's my main takeaway from the first round of this year's draft.
Yeah, I think the receiver movement is the biggest story of the draft, and doesn't obviously involve prospects directly. So interesting day 1, going to be interesting day 2, and we'll see what happens. Dave, I know you wanted to talk about as well one note on the Terrell Edmunds contract, some updated information on the structure of that deal that makes it even cheaper than we thought it was.
Not cheaper from a cash standpoint, because he's still getting paid over $2.5 million here in total. But just from a structure and cap standpoint, just goes to show you how people need to be careful about overreacting about these things right until we get the details of them. Now, that being said, you and I still said the other day, man, what a tremendous deal to get this guy back at $2.5 million. If indeed that's what it was, tax, tag, and title out the door, But when you dig deeper in this thing, we remember as part of the new CBA, and I wrote about this way before the Steelers re-signed Tyson Alualu last year, talking about that new 4-year player qualifying contract as part of the CBA. I initially envisioned, boy, what a great way to kind of to bring Tyson Alualu back into the fold under that 4-year qualifying contract, because of the fact that it comes with the cheaper cap charge. Basically, it's a benefit contract with him. Well, come to find out that's exactly the Steelers signed Terrell Edmunds to what's called it's a 1-year contract, but it's called a 4-year player qualifying contract. And under this particular benefit, it is a 1-year deal with a base salary that can be up to $1.35 million more than the minimum base salary for the said player. Now, here's one thing that's hard to kind of, and I'm glad now we have a working look at this in action here, because it makes explaining it and trying to figure out in future years a lot better. I did not know. It's kind of that gray area in the CBA about maybe a potential signing bonus in here. Now, with a regular qualifying contract, you have a maximum signing bonus of $152,500 this year. Okay. Well, apparently you can use that same qualifying contract standard of a maximum signing bonus in addition to the $1.35 million more base salary of said players. So, and the Steelers appear that they did that. They gave Edmunds $1.35 million more than what his credited year's minimum base salary would have been, which is $1.035 million. And in addition to that, they gave him the max qualified contract signing bonus of 152,500. So in total, Edmunds got a little bit more when it comes to cash. If assuming he sticks, he'll get a little bit more than the $2.5 million in total. Not much more, but he'll get a little bit more than that. Now here's the kicker here is the salary cap charge is minus that extra 1.35 million more than his base salary. So Edmunds' cap charge is what his minimum base would have been, which is $1.035 million plus whatever signing bonus you gave him, which they gave him the max, obviously, of 152,500. So Edmunds' scheduled cap charge for 2022 is $1.1875 million, which is obviously less than 2.5 million, and not by a little bit either. So at this point, I don't see how there's anybody screaming about the re-signing of Terrell Edmunds to a 1-year deal, because I mean, not even a $1.2 million cap charge on him, and you get an experienced player back in him.
Right. I mean, nobody should have been upset about the number when we thought it was just standard fare 2.5 million this year. And now that we know this piece of information, it's as cheap can get, which again is stunning for someone who's viewed as the likely starting strong safety on this team week 1. We'll see what the draft brings, obviously, but good chance Edmunds is going to be that guy week 1. And to get him on what feels like a contract that's for a backup guy who's a special teamer or something like that is fairly remarkable about what the value in the market or lack thereof there was for Edmunds.
And it gives you even more, makes the team even more wide open to be able to, if there's a safety there that they like in day 2 here specifically, they can go that route and not think twice about it. You know?
Yeah. Who are, if you have the chance to pull it up, what are similar cap charge numbers? Like, who are players on this roster that have a similar cap charge to Edmunds? I know the cash you said is, one thing. And when I called it cheaper, I was referring to it just from a cap standpoint, but I'm just curious, like, it's got to be like the same money that JC Hassenauer is making or someone like that. I'm just curious where that stacks up.
Well, Justin Lane has a cap charge this year higher than that of Terrell Edmunds at 1.195545. Overall, Pat Fryermuth already has a cap charge higher. Miles Killebrew, who
really?
Yeah, Miles Killebrew has a cap charge of 1.5175.
The backup strong safety has a higher cap charge than the presumed starting strong safety.
Even Arthur Millette has a higher cap charge. Gunnar Olszewski, higher cap charge than him. And Terrell Edmunds is slotted one spot higher than Alex Highsmith and his cap charge. So, yeah, he is he's down there if you're measuring them by as far as cap charges. And look, they just re-signed they just signed Jannard Avery, and they gave him a standard. And look, one of the reasons why they could give Terrell Edmunds this specific 4-year qualifying contract is because it is what it is. 4 years. That player has had to have been with you for 4 years consecutively with you. And that's one of the qualifying things of it being a qualifying contract. That's why you don't see many of these anyway, but it's a benefit. It's designed by the CBA to hopefully attract teams to keeping players like this around and re-signing them,
Right. Yeah. So is this the first time Pittsburgh has used this? This is a new mechanism?
Yeah. Absolutely. This is the first time since the new CBA that I've seen them use this. And once again, this is kind of what I was, a couple years, last offseason, was kind of envisioning the Steelers doing with Tyson Alualu prior to him agreeing to terms with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then doing an about face and re-signing with the Steelers.
Are you aware of any team using this before in the NFL? I'm sure somebody has, but
I'm sure someone has. I have not looked. If they have, there's probably not many of them out there.
Right. I figured as much. So interesting note on the Edmunds deal. Yeah. Again, certainly, as you said before, the time of signing does not preclude them from adding a safety in this contract detail only furthers that thought even more.
And then look, another aspect that we're talking about salary cap, we got to hit real quick is according to NFLPA, the contract of the late Dwayne Haskins has been now deleted. So okay. That is off the books. A lot of people were asking, when is that going to happen? I've been trying to dance around that out of respect and all, sure. Trying not to focus too much on that. But now that has officially happened on the books, it's news. It's worth reporting that Haskins restricted one-year tender has been dropped from the Steelers salary cap.
Understood. So good information there as always, Dave. So let's get to a couple reader emails and close out today's show.
Okay, let's do it here real quick here. It says Dave can rest easy knowing that the Steelers got their guy. Look, at least there's no doubt about it. They got QB number one on their board there. Let's see. Chris Warren writes in, Pickett, unfortunately, you guys are not privy to all the conversation between Colbert, Tomlin, Hunt, Khan, etc., but at least we can imagine how the conversation might have went. After some healthy back and forth, Tomlin turns to Colbert and says, Kevin, with all due respect, you got one foot out the door. You got to let me make this pick. Colbert immediately fires back. Pickett, coach has to say, fine, you pick it. He's trying to make a play on words here.
That's
of course, all Tomlin heard was Pickett, coach. Thus, Tomlin dropped his objection and ran down the hall to place a call to Kenny Pickett. The rest is his history. Chris, thanks for all your amazing draft coverage. Best in the business by a large margin. Look, I mean, I guess there is a debate of how much maybe say to some degree that maybe Mike Tomlin did have in this.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, they've always said it's a collaborative thing, and I think overall this pick probably was. That's a funny who's on first scenario there. It is interesting to note, though, this is the quarterback the next GM will inherit, and we'll see if that's an in-house guy like a Brandon Hunt, a Romar Khan, or an out-of-house guy. But Kevin Colbert, his last draft, the reports and the rumors have always been that he wanted to leave this team a franchise quarterback, and now he hopefully has with Kenny Pickett. Let's just hope the next GM likes him as much as Kevin Colbert presumably did.
Chris Lookhart writes in, hey, guys, can you tell me what the difference is between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett? Because they seem like the same exact person, only one is younger.
Yeah, I understand the overall comparison there. I mean, let's get Pickett on the field. I mean, Trubisky obviously was not in a great situation in Chicago, but I think Pickett was a better decision-making guy. And certainly from their college profile, Pickett was a lot more experienced. Trubisky was a one-year starter, couldn't even beat out Marquise Williams, was an undrafted free agent whenever he, became draft eligible. And so their career arcs are a lot different in terms of their day one readiness. And Trubisky really was not day one ready, kind of got thrown in the fire. That probably impacted and hindered his NFL career. So I understand the point you're making about overall like body type and arm strength, mobility, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Pickett is a lot smarter in terms of where he was coming out of college compared to where Trubisky was coming out of college, and just more ready for the NFL.
Sim Football Critic, what's up, guys? Going to keep it short and sweet. I did not expect Willis and Pickett to be available at 20, and the Steelers choosing Pickett over Willis in that situation. He says, I admit I may have been caught up in Willis' ability to make plays off script rather than looking at who the best overall quarterback may be. I'm happy the Steelers didn't have to trade up to get their quarterback. Only time will tell if this was the best option. As always, appreciate all the fantastic coverage. FYI, I signed up for the ad-free version of the site a month ago. Just wanted to make sure I showed my support. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sim Football Critic, for doing that. Look, one of the things that I think you can continually to go back to in this thing is they got their QB1. They did not have to trade any draft capital to do so. That's another positive in it. They got a guy that they know more than any other quarterback in this class, bar none, without a doubt. I think I can guarantee that. Why did a few of us think Willis was going to be the guy is because what we view as the potential higher ceiling. Now, it's a gamble there. The kid, as we said several times about Willis, man, the oh wow things on tape are just amazing with Willis. Additionally, the oh wow portions of Willis tape show you the level of the low side with him there. It really feels like they went the way with comfort, as we stated in this thing. Overall, I think, why were you caught up in the Ritter aspect of it, Alex? Why? Was it maybe because you thought both Willis and Pickett would be out the board?
Yeah, it was part of that. And maybe this is a problem with my mock drafts. I hate putting a guy in a mock draft in the first round that I think might not be there. I mean, it's easy. I don't know. I hate putting that guy there because you feel like you want to have the guy that might be around. Sure, but I mean, I didn't want to put a Jordan Davis on there because I thought Davis was going to be gone. I mean, I thought Ritter had a good chance to actually be on the board at that point. I thought there was a chance to Pickett and Willis would not be there. So that's one reason why I went Ritter. I went Ritter for some of the similar reasons why they went Pickett: the readiness, the maturity, the leadership, the intangible type stuff. So I think I was on the right track in terms of, picking the type of quarterback they wanted, but obviously I did not mock them Kenny Pickett. He was in my others considered list, though. The only other quarterback I put in my others considered, but obviously I did not get the pick correct.
Craig Foster writes in, very disappointed that the Steelers didn't trade back and then draft Pickett. He says, clearly there was several teams looking to trade up. No other team was likely to take a quarterback in the first round. This was a lost opportunity, he says. Could have added a third and a fourth round pick. Any thoughts? I mean, that's pure speculation, right? I mean, but Colbert didn't Colbert say there were some offers for some people to come up, but if they come up and he's your QB1 and he's the guy you're aiming after, then why not stay put at QB1?
Yeah, I'm not mad at this team for staying at 20. I mean, there might have been an opportunity. Kansas City moved up one spot behind him. Buffalo moved up to 23. So maybe those teams would have been willing to come up to 20. So you could argue that there was a chance for other teams who would want to come up. But Pittsburgh, you waited this long. You sweated it out. You tried to trade up. That guy's there. If it's your guy, that's your guy. Personally, I think the idea of trading down, like, we love this guy, but let's wait a couple more picks and see if we can get some value out of this and get an extra fourth. I mean, that doesn't, if you love a guy, you take a guy, no questions asked.
Right, absolutely. I mean, in no way at all, in my opinion, should anybody be blasting the Steelers for not trading down there, especially when we went into this thing thinking this team's going to draft a quarterback in the first round, and for them to obviously get their QB1. Now if we're sitting here talking about this was QB2 or QB3 or what have you, then maybe we can entertain something like that a little bit more, especially now after the fact, knowing that only one quarterback went in the first round, but you don't know that stuff at the time. But I think it's unfair to criticize Colbert for not trading back with them getting QB1 at 20.
Right, absolutely. It really sounds like they had a real offer on the table to Houston to go up to 15, because Casario reportedly said, like, we had a chance to go back, which I interpret that as Pittsburgh made a firm offer of, here's what we'll do to go up to 15, and Houston just started
that gives a guy like me a little bit of comfort in this.
Right, because you wanted them to show the aggressiveness, like, this is our guy, we're planting our flag, let's go get him, and clearly they had an intent to do that.
Right. Look, the thing that I said all along with this quarterback class is, man, show me some conviction. Whoever the QB is, right. Show me some conviction. And at least now I think we've got some notion of conviction that they were going to try to go up to get Pickett. And who knows, maybe they were trying to get up, even into the, it sounds like they made calls all over the place. Now, what they may be asked to give up was obviously out of Colbert's comfort zone and all. And we'll always be left to wondering, well, what if Pickett would have been gone? Would they have gone Willis there? Well, that's something. It's impossible to answer, at this point here. But no, I don't think you can blast Kevin Colbert for not trading down, honestly. And look, I would have no issue doing that if I was with the reader here or listener here.
Yeah, if I was Pittsburgh, regardless of who my quarterback one was, if he was there, I'm taking him. I'm not answering the phone, because if that's the guy, that's the guy. And because God forbid you trade down a couple spots and he gets taken, or someone else trades up, or something happens and you lose out on that guy. It's not worth the risk when you're talking about your quarterback, your top quarterback in this class.
All right, one last one. Another Pickett question from Pastor Joe Green. Dave and Alex, your prep has made this draft season one of my favorites ever. Thank you to you and your team for amazing volume and quality of work. Now, my Pickett question: what do you think started all the discussion about Pickett's hand size? I think it counts 0, but it really threw a wrench in the early Pickett worship. Did some chess player with the Steelers put the word out about how big of a concern it should be? LOL. In any case, the Steelers and Pickett are likely both thrilled beyond measure. I see what you did there. Local kid makes good. Thanks again. Look, I mean, they've talked about hand size and quarterbacks for several years now. So that obviously, and then once you got to the Senior Bowl and him not measuring, it becomes a bigger story, obviously on the immediate heels of Joe Burrow the year, a couple of years ago. That's why it's a story.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that it really became like a national story at the Senior Bowl whenever he opted to not have his hand measured and was working on exercises to improve the double jointedness in him or something like that. And so that's kind of what became a national story. But Pittsburgh obviously not concerned, and I think Colbert said as much in a press or in an interview like several weeks or months ago that he didn't care about that kind of stuff. So yeah, not a concern. But when it comes to quarterbacks, Wonderlic and hand size are always the metrics that get talked about.
All right, anything else that we missed in this episode, Alex?
Sleep. I missed some sleep. I apologize. It probably sounded like crap today. I got up, went to bed at like 4. Had no power this morning, so I'm like trying to get ready by candlelight and that kind of stuff. But should be a fun day too. The draft power's back. The Steelers on the clock, and we'll have a lot of coverage throughout the evening.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming on Kenny Pickett as this thing progresses as well too. So good story overall. Local kid stays in Pittsburgh. We have plenty of time to break down his film and pros and cons. Moving forward, we'll do it as objectively as we do. That's what we do. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar. For $25, you can have an ad-free version of the site. So in the meantime, until the same time about tomorrow, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.